Ah. Okay. So here we're still looking through that little historical walk, and I'm going to take a little walk away from most of the games that I've hit upon so far. I've had a real wargaming focus on. I'm going to step away from that because I'm hitting the 19th century economic stuff. Still trying to fight my way through the World War II Axis empires, Tora for Dicenso. And, I mean, I play like one little segment and I have to go sit down and get away from it and get it out of my head, which probably is not making it at all easy to play. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump from here over to 20th century economic stuff, and I don't know, just hit them together. Now, we've hit a few economic things before, games like Brass that have come into this because they came into their time period. But here the biggie for me is the 18XX games. First time I ran across 1830, it was just such a... I picked it up at sort of a costume shop. It was in Buffalo, New York. They had a line of games, maybe like, I don't know, 20 games on their shelves. So much less than I was used to when I was a kid, but it was the closest thing to a game store I could find at that time, other than sort of the closest thing that had anything like war games, actually. And especially had the Avalon Hill stuff. And it, I brought it to our Realms of Fantasy, which was like our club in the basement for the hobby, and we pulled it out and just played the short game, and had somebody bankrupted within 2-3 hours or so, and just, wow, what a cruel game. That's awesome. And I've been in love with the XX series since then. And I've got a pile of these. I've done a couple of them, not 1830, but I did, 1861, and I don't know, 18AL, I think. I'm not sure what else. And in a similar fashion, I've been picking up some of the Winsome games. I'm not as impressed with these, maybe because I'm playing them solo only. Well, not entirely. So, for example, I think I played both the Age of Steam and maybe Chicago Express 2-player. No, just Age of Steam. Played Age of Steam 2-player, and it was fun, but it doesn't catch me in the same way. Also in the same rail game sort of mindset is the Empire Builder and the whole series there, the Crayon Rails games, which, they hooked me so heavily when I first picked them up. I thought they were the coolest thing in the world, and we used to make them into these harsh games where we would, turn the card over and make it into a 6-2 train, and then put a chip over it and it would become a 6-1 train, and you'd have to buy upgrades up to the 9-2. Speed 9 could carry 2 loads. Track that you bought, you'd have to pay to run on, which you wouldn't normally have to do, and when you went bankrupt, your track would stay, and you could pay to run on it as though it was another player, and other people could buy it up at normal prices, but it was there otherwise. It's kind of an open track for anyone. Anyway, after that period of harsh rails, then I came to this point where one of my friends became very, very much... He always liked the games, and he liked them better and better. And it just... I, for one, began not enjoying them as much, and I really didn't enjoy the kind of thinking that was involved in them compared to, say, the XX games, or other things like Lords of Sierra Madre, which is nowhere near as good a game, I would say, than even the ones I don't like, but there's something so cool about it. Rail Baron, this was a game that I picked up and really was not happy about after having bought. Basically, the same friend who had the Crayon Rails fetish or whatever, I barely knew him at the time, and he bought Rail Baron. We played it once, again in the basement where we used to game, and I thought, what a cool game, great, I had no other rail games at this point, and I ran. He wouldn't let me borrow it because we hardly knew each other, so I ran out and bought it. And within a couple of plays, I just didn't like it anymore. He kept liking it just as much, but it's never been really cool to me. I looked at Railroad Barons. That's the XX 2-player game I think I did a vid on. I did not mark it down as a solo play on here. It doesn't count. It tried to distill XX and it didn't really capture it. Silverton, awesome design. The idea being that you own kind of the railroads as well as the mines, and you're trying to hook the mines up and run them. And long game, lots of detail. You're getting your stock value. You don't have stock value, but you're getting your deliveries and everything and collecting up this cash. Really cool design. Bullfrog Goldfield felt like, when I heard about it, I said, oh, this is a lighter version of that. This is going to be a Euro-fied version of it, but that'll be really cool. Well, I think it would have been really cool. It just kind of didn't impress me as a game, especially for the luck factor. Hey, I got some non-war games and non-economic games hitting here. Things like Consulting Detective and 221B Baker Street, and then Undead. Let's take a look at these very briefly. Consulting Detective, really awesome system. Really uses your brain here to try to figure out these puzzles of a mystery. But as a playing of a game, I don't know, it's not really, even when you play the social version where you're sitting around with other people trying to solve it all at once. One, they're too hard. They're just too hard for me. I just can't get them right. I'm often guessing wrong, or else not going to enough places, or going to way too many places is what I was going to say. 221B Baker Street, this thing is a little charm. It's kind of like Clue in that you move around the board and go from place to place, but you're selecting these little puzzles, games within a game sometimes, anagrams, stuff like that. They're not... Consulting Detective gives you really the feel of being Holmes, looking at these puzzles and saying, oh, this is what's going on. Well, 221B is more of a gamey type solution, but it was a lot of fun and I had a kick with it. I ended up giving it an 8, actually. I thought it was really cool the way it played out. Problem, like Consulting Detective, limited number of plays. You probably can only play each scenario once until you forget about it. Undead, this is Steve Jackson Games. Little plastic box. 3-player game optimally, with one person running the game and the 2 others, one being the vampires, one being the hunters. And you could play with more, conceivably, more hunters. Not aware of what the other is doing, with the game master kind of rearranging the map and hiding things for him. It's playable in 2, and almost as good, but maybe not quite as interesting. I've got this as a humongously long game. It cannot be that long. I've got it at 9, which means that I think it's 9 hours. I don't think it's that long. I just noticed that and said, oh my god. Okay, let's jump ahead now through all this 20th century military stuff, which I'll touch on, no question, and go to the economic stuff. Okay, and the economic stuff puts me at, and non-military stuff. This puts me at things like Acquire. Acquire has become something like a classic now, but nobody used to play it. You'd find it in tag sales along with these other bookshelf games that I think people bought because they were kind of pretty, but I never knew anyone who played these things. Some of them obviously people did play and take a look at, but it's kind of funny the cult status this has reached and gotten, re-releases and such. I already talked about Bullfrog Goldfields. I put it in the 20th century because it's at the beginning of the 20th century, and it's really not in the 19th century at all. I was, again, saddened by how much luck there was in it and where it fell. It falls right at the end. something called the Cities game. This is a Psychology Today game. They put out a series of these. This was really a minimalist game. You're cutting deals with one another, and it's almost like a prisoner's dilemma type of situation where if you come to the right deal and agree to it, everybody could win, but it's possible to win more than other people by kind of being a dick. Dealer's Choice. This was an old Parker Brothers game. Kind of like Masterpiece. It reminds me of it in the same sort of way, where everybody, but in this case, unlike Masterpiece, Masterpiece is this game where, and we'll hit that also, so I'll just skip it there, but it's this game where you have these hidden values behind the paintings. You're bidding on art pieces, and they have a real value behind them that the player who owns it's aware of. Well, Dealer's Choice is like that, except everybody's got different values. So a car could be worth quite a bit to you, but nothing to someone else. And it's just kind of this weird twist on the Masterpiece side. It doesn't have the beautiful pieces of Masterpiece, but the weird twist made it very interesting. I really loved this at one point. I've grown less intrigued by it and didn't bring it up at this point. I got something called Energy Quest. I don't know what the hell that is. Executive Decision. This is another 3M game, a later one. This was one of the ones I really liked, but it's almost like Avalon Hill's business strategy. You buy commodities, build stuff, and sell, finished product out of it. And market values all based on the buying and selling, the prices that you generate there. I've rated this highly. Nobody else seems to like it. Fast food franchise. Looks like Monopoly and Acquire combined. You've got kind of this terrain that you move through in an Acquire type map, but you build off of it based on locations on the board that you're moving around in a Monopoly type fashion. It's an interesting game. Tim Jim, definitely, I don't know, some people have really liked it. File 13, this is Best of the Dragon game, just a bit of silliness with Tom Lamb. High Bid, this is another 3M game. This was a kind of weird thing where you're bidding on to try to get collections. It's an auctioning game. I thought it was kind of interesting as an auctioning game, but I don't like auction games, and actually, honestly, when I look at this, my whole group seems to have disliked them out of the people who played it. Everybody who's played it, only one person rated it above a 4. It's not a broken game either. So I'm just guessing that pure auction mechanic wasn't well liked in my group. I have Lords of the Hood. This is Buffalo designed and based game. It's sort of like a Monopoly, but you're grabbing drugs and criminal rackets and the like throughout the city of Buffalo. Masterpiece, like I talked about before, the big thing with Masterpiece though is these beautiful paintings in it. It just adds to the joy and the pleasure of the game so much that even a kind of simple game ends up very, very interesting because of it. Maxi Bourse, I did a bit on this. This is a weird, broken little game by TSR where you're moving around the board buying and selling stocks, but the prices can fluctuate, completely at the whim of the players, what they're willing to pay for the stocks. And that sets the market value, which is just really a weird system. Very true to life in some sense, but not in the sense that anybody with any reasonable amount of money, Bill Gates might be able to influence the price of stocks, but it's almost like you're an investment company, and a huge one at that. Monopoly, this is such a classic, and I know people hate it, but when played right, it's not a bad game. I've given it an 8. I don't think it would deserve an 8, except for the fact of the historical stance that it has, But at its time, there was nothing like it, and it spawned a whole slew of different family games because of it. Some of which were pure clones, but a lot of which were kind of different things like Clue and such. And I think it's overall a pretty interesting game. Power Barons, God, I don't know what this is. I don't even remember this. Power Grid, hey. Power Production, and supplying it to cities. Very much a Euro, no question about it. I mean, it's, you know, one of the defining ones at this point, I would say, but it's got a really nice design. You're bidding on these power plants. They have different attributes to them. The price of the different commodities that they need varies based on how much people are using them. So there's, you know, a lot of interesting decision making, but it's well linked to what the theme is actually about. Price list. This is something people who liked who I guess liked Euros and liked a lot of games actually ended up, it got some pretty high ratings compared to others. This was an kind of an auction bidding game where you're trying to collect these sets on the board, and I don't remember a lot about it, but it got a really, really good rating. I don't even think I brought this sucker with me. I don't really like it, but I gave it a low rating at 6, and I see, you know, it's got like 4 9s or something. I don't know why that particular group rated it so high. A lot of names on here that I don't really recognize, giving it very high numbers. So it was not my normal gaming group rating this. Showbiz, this was an Avalon Hill game, a little bit of silliness, porno magazines and demons. It's an interesting game where you can bid on different talent. Nothing terribly great about it, I think, but I see at least a couple decent ratings on it. Stock market game, this was Avalon Hill's one of a couple of their stock games. This one really sucked as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't a lot of fun to play, and it wasn't particularly more realistic than another one, which is Stocks and Bonds, the 3M game. Now this one also got tanked in terms of score, probably because it's pretty random. I gave it a pretty decent rating at 7, but nobody else really seemed to like it that much out of the group that I had rating it. Now my family liked it when I was young, and then when I brought it to college, some of the gamers who were, you know, less serious gamers, maybe, I don't know, they were more like today's Euro gamers are the ones who kind of liked it, but some others said yuck, and very strongly said yuck, 1s and 2s here, even though there are some decisions in it to make. Recent one, Urban Sprawl. This was an interesting game for me. I know some reviewers that I really respect seem to have rated this as one of the top games of the year. I just don't see it. I thought it was okay, you know, and I don't have that view of all the games in a year, especially the very Euro-ish games. I'd say it's certainly better than Bullfrog Goldfield, but you know, when given this and a choice of a bunch of unknowns, would say, yeah, it's an okay game, but I wouldn't even consider it for best game of the year. There's got to be something better out there. I'm not sure I saw it. Venture is a weird set game where you draw cards and you make these plays to try to make these conglomerate corporations, and you're rearranging your cards to get to some sort of valuation. It was didn't get a very high rating. This was a 3M game. I haven't played it in a long time, and I never played it much. I can remember sitting on the floor of a coffee shop to play it. Maybe one of the few times that I've got it played here. It just was not that enthralling. A lot of brain work in it that didn't seem to pay off. Vampire Prince of the City. This didn't terribly impress me. It could have been interesting. I've got a video on it. Clue. Clue. I give this a reasonably good rating. I had a lot of people who rated this. Some of it gave it very good rating. Not many gave it very bad. I got one 1 in there and a 5. I mean, if you haven't played Clue, what's so kind of, why is it worth a decent rating? Well, something that's achieved that level of popularity deserves some second thought, first of all. And it's a nice little mechanism for a guessing game. It's a little too easy, like a Battleship or something like that, to come up with how you want to ask for these things. I played another game that I didn't want to bring into here that I don't own, so it's not in this set, something called Alibi, that felt like a looser Clue. You don't have the board movement, you just have the hand of cards, and you're trying to gather together information. I don't remember too much, I played it once. But the thing was, one of the players really didn't much like it, and he was able to completely end the game by making his guess early. That was one of the things he found out was, oh, we all lose, nobody wins particularly, or something like that. It was really a weird situation. He was able to bone everybody's chance by making this guess early, which just really sucked. Clue has a nice defense against that. Only the player who's trying to win gets the luck, and then he reveals if he's correct, but he puts it back if he's not. Crack the Case. Damn, I don't remember this. This is a Milton Bradley game. I remember having fun with it, like a lot of fun. My rating doesn't really reflect that. I only gave it a 6, and other people gave it a 7, but recently did 1960 Making of a President. This was kind of cool, a CDG, but based on the political structure. The one thing I like about it, compared to most of the political games I have, is it actually does seem a little grounded in history, a little better than most of them. Candidate, as an example, that's not, reflects primary races, and like most primary games that I have, it really fails to capture the idea that, once that primary starts chugging, somebody pretty much is just holding on to it all along, at least in modern primaries, but even in the earlier ones, those early states tended to finish things up pretty quickly. Mr. President. This is, again, presidential election rather than the nomination process. And there's really this divergence, two types of games. I feel like the ones that handle the party nominations tend to have this real weakness. Mr. P doesn't really feel like the stakes fall. For that matter, 1960 can be the same way. You can make your strategy put you in a place where it's really hard to believe that the Democrats and Republicans could be sitting at that time period. Well, Mr. P is far worse in this way. It really comes down to you both have the same deck and you're playing against one another with little or no differentiation. But I still think it's a fantastic game. So I'm not going to trash it for that. You've got my video for that. Road to the White House. This is always kind of a disappointment because this is sort of the most detailed and complex. You get to build your own character. You get to do this, real primary politics. You can build in the dates for the primaries and caucuses and make sure that everything falls out right, and then it kind of falls on its face, and you just don't get that bandwagon effect that I think you need. I think some tweaking to this game can make it very realistic, might not make it a better game. The other side of it, there's some candidates, some situations you can set up, not only some that are just, are going to lose, they're unbalanced, but there are some that you can set up that are just totally painful to play, like if you have tons and tons of issues, where you just have to keep track of so many things to play the game at all. There are others that are very easy, so I mean you can tailor it to your own play, but it's painful. Hey, we got some sports games. Baseball Strategy. This was a Avalon Hill game where you kind of pick pitch versus hit. It's almost like the video games or so even some of the early video games had this kind of pitch and hit selection, like Nintendo had them. It's like that, and you fit it into the batting average and see what happens. Interesting little system, but without the historical players being associated with it, and without the ability to play seasons, and with all the cumbersome decisions made on each pitch, it just didn't do what I wanted in a baseball game. So didn't get rated well. I don't want to go into elephant hunt. Long ball. This was my my equivalent to Status Pro. This is the one that I got instead of Status Pro Baseball, and I got it in. I don't know if there was more than 1 year. I got 1 year of it. There weren't many. This is the 1977 season, which was when I was biggest into baseball, and everything just converged. And then several years later, I can remember playing this during the Iran-Contra trials, and playing out the entire season finally. And that was kind of an exciting situation I had. You can get some pretty unrealistic results in there. I had like a 45-game winner or something. Pennant Race. This is this the SPI one? No, this is Avalon Hill. This was a really cool idea. But unfortunately, it was a little after I got out of baseball. I was no longer as excited by it, by this era, as I was in the long ball era, the 1977 season. So I think this is like 81 or something, and I was less excited about the players, less excited about the teams, and still excited about the ones back in 77. In this one, you select your lineup, you roll a bunch of dice, and you see what happens for the entire game. Much, much easier to play out a season. I don't think I ever managed it. This is by Joe Balkowski, of all people. If 3M's Pro Football, abstract football game, similar to baseball strategy is all I can really say about it. TSR's Ringside, boxing game, looked kind of interesting. Speed Circuit by Avalon Hill, racing game. It was kind of fun. I didn't rate it too highly, but I see a couple people who did very well on it. I don't remember much about it. I certainly would rather have been playing Win, Place, and Show, or Circus Maximus, or Car Wars, or just about anything else. It's just not my flavor. Tennis, Parker Brothers, a little card game you get to play tennis with. Pretty crappy game, to tell you the truth, almost all along. Touring, this is Mealborn's, or Mealborn, but missing a few of the cards of it, essentially. It's a simpler version of Mealborn. Win, Place, and Show, this was really a cool game. It's horse racing, but you're taking on stable owners as your role, and you buy horses, you get to bet on them, you get money not just for racing, but also for laying your side bets on that. And I remember it being really kind of a lot of fun. Dice involved for movement, nice little feel. Express, I just played this recently, I haven't done a video on it. This is almost a rummy type game, where you are building train. Okay, well, let's keep going with this. I was talking about Express. So this is a game where you're laying down meld of different train cards, mainly freight cars. There's a special bonus to passenger cards with cars, which are generally which are low value. They're single point value cards, but they can kind of accumulate in different ways than the regular freight cards can. And that's just one little piece of strategy in it. I rated it fairly high, like a 6. My wife gave it a 7. It probably doesn't deserve that from me, because it's really not the kind of game that I generally like, except I had really good memories of playing it long, long ago. I definitely enjoyed it back then. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure quite why, maybe because nobody else liked it. And also there was the fact that while my wife and I were playing, I could annoy the hell out of her by singing piggyback, I got a piggyback, which definitely improved my enjoyment, because I like bringing misery to other people's lives. We also played California recently. California. Ended up misplaying it largely, but it's an interesting game. She found it a lot more interesting in terms of like feeling kind of like The Sims, in terms of buying furniture and stuff, I felt like it was far too disassociated from that, and I didn't think that she would like it actually because of that. It just, to me, it felt like I'm buying random tiles. Careers. This was a game I really, really liked at one point for whatever reason, even once I had, you know, some more serious games around. The victory conditions selection, for example. And it was actually one of the things that I liked when I saw Magic Realm as well. I thought of them as similar in that you're just moving around the board and having largely random stuff happen to you. But it's kind of cool to have some effect on that, I guess. I don't know. I don't think I'd enjoy it at all nowadays. I mean, I'm a different person from when I was, you know, in my 20s. Dallas, and that's kind of sad. This was another one that I could never get anybody to play. This is the SPI. It's marked at the Geek as a role-playing game, and SPI marked it as a role-playing game. It's not. It's no more a role-playing game than, say, Illuminati is. That's kind of the level at which you're playing these characters. You have cards for them, you have cards for things they control, you try to influence other things by playing cards against one another and using influence chips like you would money in Illuminati. It actually feels a lot like Illuminati, except that your character has certain specific goals based on the plot of the story, and there's a game master who determines the plot and determines what the story is going to be like, and kind of leaves the players loose in a world where they can play an Illuminati-like mechanism in a managed environment, and a story somewhat, you know, scripted by the game master. It's an interesting design. I ended up coming up with a game out of it sometime back in, 2001, 2002. I came up with Bush, which was going to be, it was supposed to be played at the convention that I was at. I got a couple of players for it and ended up canceling it because I really wanted at least 6 or 7 people to play in it. And with only 2, it just was not going to work. But it was going to play, you know, with Bush family and the election debacle and all that. Food Fight, silly game where you're throwing food out of the Best of the Dragon series. Legal Decision. This is by Gotti Games. Name sound familiar? Yeah, I haven't tracked it down completely, but I think so. I found someplace. First of all, this thing is just a complete attempt at kind of satirizing, you know, our legal system. You've got somebody up on trial for a murder or something. And there's, it's almost a random situation whether or not they end up getting convicted. It's not completely random, but each player has this deck of cards. Problem is the game doesn't work. It doesn't tell a good story, and I made attempts to change it so it told a good story, and then it still kind of just doesn't hang together nicely. What it really ends up being is you're playing cards, and once one person gets the entire jury convinced that the guy's either guilty or innocent, hey, the game ends, and the jury just says, hey, we're ready now. You know, no more evidence, please. Which is just silly. But may be true in a lot of ways, because once somebody's made up their mind, sometimes it's hard to sway them. Anyway, that may be the point that we're trying to make. This sucker never got a good amount of points. Nobody rated it above a 2. It is a broken game that I tried to fix a couple of times. Hey, I got the Game of Life here. Somehow or another I got a copy, not of the original, but some revamped version that came out in the 90s. It actually was a little cooler. It had, you know, not just the stock market, but it had some other little option that you could play that allowed maybe jobs or something like that. It had something else that added to it a tiny bit, brought the rating all the way up to a 2 for me. Yeah, that's not a game I like at all. Avalon Hill's Outdoor Survival, otherwise known as Death in the Woods. A number of scenarios where you're wandering around in, terrain that looks kind of like upstate New York. And yeah, within a couple of days of being out there, you're like dying because you can't find water or food. And, I don't know, you forgot to bring a Hershey's bar or something. There aren't any real dangers other than just, starving to death. And I mean, I've wandered around in the wilderness and have never been in a situation where I couldn't find water, okay? Water is about the easiest thing in the world to find. I don't know how you can expect to be in a situation where you would not find water in any kind of rough terrain. Now, if you're in the desert, yeah, but you're not going to have terrain that looks like it is there. I mean, this is trees, and it's very clear there are going to be streams. Maybe the water's not good for you, but damn it, you're not going to die of lack of water. Lack of food, maybe. Game seems to have that happen a little quickly, too. I mean, I've gone 2 weeks without eating. I probably couldn't be marching 8 hours, 16 hours a day. But I went on some significant hikes during that period, several hours at a time or something. One has tremendous reserves, let's just put it that way. Tikal, this is one I got for my wife, basically, my ex-wife, because she was into anthropology and archaeology, and this was a fun little game. I've gotten my dad to play it, I've gotten people from different places to play it, essentially, and I can see, where the appeal is. This is where Euros kind of shine, in that they kind of, have this broader reach than some of the real simulation games. There's still some thought process in here, but it's fun, it's got pretty pieces, nice components. It's not, it's not the cardboard chits. It's not a matter of having to just know things like the zones of control and how many hexes apart that means you have to have your units, or whatever that kind of stuff that follows in a lot of the war games tends to have. But it's got a little bit more to it in terms of flavor, etc., than, say, a pure abstract would. I wouldn't say, I don't see a difference, though, between something like this and a pure abstract. I can kind of look at the story and kind of imagine what's going on, but I'm not too thrilled, and I don't understand what it means to put a guy on top of the pyramid and say, it's sealed off, I own it now. What? Why couldn't you own it before? What is happening here? What's the mechanic in play, other than some game aspect? So when I look at that, it kind of confuses me and kind of makes me less happy than I am with, say, Mancala, which, I'd rather play a pure abstract than most of these Euro-style games that don't link to the flavor terribly well. And I feel that way about this one. It's not a bad game. I think it's a well-designed, pretty game that you can bring to anyone. But, why is the theme even there? Anyway, I load this one up. I don't know when I'm going to get to the 20th century war stuff. There's a lot of it because World War II is such a big story. One thing I wanted to touch on from before, though, when I did the American Civil War stuff that I kind of forgot while I was clipping some counters for Dixie, of all things, kind of stretching between the World War II and American Civil War all at once, is looking at the military situation, the tactical combat particularly. In different eras, the American Civil War, for all its popularity, is one of the simplest and least interesting eras to do tactical combat in, I would would say. Least interesting in the sense that there's less intricate combined arms type activities. When it comes down to it, and this may be what I like most about it tactically, is I can just grab my infantry and march forward and hit the enemy. I don't have to really worry. Yeah, an outflank is great and all this, but for the most part, I don't have a lot of different capabilities for my units. I set my line up, I can fire, I have artillery, which has a certain primarily defensive advantage in the American Civil War. The infantry actually has the defensive advantage, especially once it's entrenched. And there isn't a lot of choice there. It's forward or stand. When you look at Napoleonics, where the attacker has more advantages, charging forward, bringing the cav around to threaten, getting the line to form into a square, and then bombarding that with artillery, being able to bring the artillery up right to the front of the battle early on. And you have that in really some of the earlier stuff too, the Age of Reason, much of the same, even if the charges aren't quite, even if the cav isn't quite as potent in arm and the artillery isn't as potent, still you have this combined arms in a way that you don't have in the American Civil War. And then you get that again probably late in World War I period. And one thing I want to get into is that dichotomy between World War I and World War II. World War II is so popular, and I've got some big questions as to why, when most of the really interesting changes happened, either in the American Civil War or in World War I. It was that period to me where the real differences happened. World War II is just kind of the let's try them all out for real this time, almost. And that may be the appeal there. Anyway, let's get on with it.